The term eventology was actually coined 30 years ago in Japan by the Dentsu Advertising Company. Dentsu asked the Japanese government to measure and evaluate the types of events that were being held, such as World's Fairs, major sports events, Olympic Games, and determine a return on investment for the country so that they could tell their sponsors, this is why you should sponsor events. So they created the Japanese Institute for Eventology, this term, and we actually affiliate with them here at Queen Margaret University. We have a strategic partnership. But the term eventology is used more recently in the last 20 years in mathematics. It's actually a subset of probability theory. And it has to do with identifying the patterns, the processes, and the somewhat predictable outcomes. There's that word again, outcome. And of course, our students know that word is derived from the term event, which in Latin means a for out and venire for come. So an event is literally an outcome, whether a random outcome or a planned outcome. And Russians use the term for event sobiete. And it's interesting how different languages have different meanings. The term event in Russian does not mean outcome. It means a state of co-being. So it means this would not be an event tonight with only me standing in this room. It took all of you, all of us, to make this an event. Vorobov, who's actually done quite a bit of research as a mathematician in Russia about eventology, describes it as a new direction of probability theory and philosophy. It offers the original event approach to the description of variability and ignorance, entering an agent together with his or her beliefs, directly in the frameworks of scientific research in the form of eventological distribution of his or her own events. Well, he and I have been working together over the last year to see if we can take a mathematical formula and apply it to human events, so that those of you in the hotel industry, those of you that work for local council, those of you who work for universities can indeed begin to forecast and predict the probable outcome of future events, so that the events that you produce in the future will have a lower margin of risk and a much higher opportunity for success. And that leads us to eventology and the experience economy. About 200 years ago, most of the people in this area were farmers. And they grew the grain, they baked the grain, they ground it, and they baked a birthday cake for probably John's great-great-grandmother. But the great-grandmother then moved into the industrial economy, and while working a little bit part-time or having other responsibilities, would go to Tesco or to Lidl, and she would buy a box cake mix, right? And make her own cake from an industrial mix. Later, John's mom probably worked full-time and was part of what's called the service economy. And as part of the service economy, she didn't even have time to bake the cake. She might have stopped at Tesco, Lidl, or the local bake shop and picked up a cake that said, "Happy birthday, John." And how about John? Well, he had a birthday recently, and he didn't ask, "Where's the cake?" He said to me, "Where are we going?" Because John's generation looks at life as experiences. And Pine and Gilmore, two economists from Harvard University, who studied the experience and the transformation economy, concluded after 100 years of economic study in the world that in fact when you layer a product or service with an experience, you can charge more. And of course they give wonderful examples such as, how many of you have heard of Planet Hollywood? Raise your hands. Well, at Planet Hollywood, you know, they take all the memorabilia of the rock stars, and it's dark and the music is loud. Well, a few years ago, Nancy and I took her Aunt Dot there in Myrtle Beach, North Carolina, and we went in, and Aunt Dot was in her late 80s, and she's quite religious, and she turned around and she looked, and she ran into the parking lot. Well, I chased her in the parking lot. I said, "Are you all right, Aunt Dot?" She turned to me and she said, "This is what hell must be like." Well, that's not the kind of experience we want, is it? But then they give the example of the Rainforest Cafe. How many of you have heard of the Rainforest Cafe? Well, you know, Marion, at the Rainforest Cafe, what happens? You go and give your name to the host. They don't say, will call you when your table's ready. Oh no, they say, please enjoy yourself. Take this little vibrator, will vibrate you when it's time for your table. And off you go, not to a cold wooden bench to sit in the rain, but to a gift shop where you browse and you see the fish swim in these giant aquaria, and you hear growling from inside the restaurant from animatronics. And a few minutes later, the host standing behind the table says, Dr. Goldblatt, your adventure is about to begin. They've raised the expectation. And in fact, you do go in and you dine, and the food is very good. Not as great as, a 5-star restaurant, but just as good as most restaurants. But they charge 40% more. Why? Because they layer every single service and product with an experience to create more value. Now, Pine and Gilmore also suggest that when you transform a guest or a customer, you can do something more. Not just charge more, and you'll like this, those of you from the business community. You can charge whatever you want. And an example is in the United States of America, where most students pay fees to go to universities, every year the fees go up 2, 3, 5%, and so does demand. More students apply for college, more want to go than ever before. Why? Because we do something that most businesses do not do at the end of 4 years. We give them a diploma. We transform them in some measurable way. Well, I would argue that Pine and Gilmore are absolutely spot on about experience and transformation, but they've missed the ultimate definition of value. And that's when we have an opportunity, as the leaders of our university have done, or in the process of doing, to recreate, redefine a community. In other words, that when we use events to create stronger communities, better communal relationships, and this word communitas, then we've created something that is truly sustainable.